three of us are. So, okay. So let me start out our time here. Let me find, okay, so I've got, yeah. Yes, we will do that. So we'll have each of you just introduce yourselves and lay out what stage of life that you're in. Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Megan, and I'm engaged to this guy.
I'm Matt, and engaged to Megan.
Morning, I'm Matt, and this is my wife Victoria, and this is my second marriage.
Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm married to Matt. This is my first marriage.
Hi, I'm
Last,
Arlene.
I should say.
I'm Arlene and I'm single.
Hi, I'm Amanda, and I'm married, but my husband is at work, so he's not here. I'm Sam, and I am married.
I'm also married to Sam, and we've been married for 4.5 years and have a little 18-month-old who's cuter than every other 18-month-old.
I'm Melanie, and I am single.
All right, you guys hold on to the mics and we'll pass those three mics amongst you guys. So I'm going to throw out the first few questions. So students, my cell phone's up there, okay? Or be thinking of a question that you want to ask as we go through. So I'm just going to get it going for us, and then you guys can ask some questions as well. So how do you resolve the fights you have had, and how do you overcome them? How do you resolve the fights, and how do you overcome them? So just snag a mic right there.
All right. My number one advice to anyone in any sort of relationship, even if you're just in a friendship with someone, is just communicate. Because the main thing is when you are angry at someone, they probably don't know what's going on inside your head. And I have found that to be true in my marriage and when dating Brandon. We both process things very differently. I process things a lot faster, and he takes a little bit longer. So we have had fights where we fight about something, and then we sit in the car for like 30 minutes, and by the end, I've already gone through, resolved it in my head, and I'm like, okay, we're good now. And he is still thinking about that thing and being like, why am I so angry? So knowing that and knowing how each other processes things, and also being able to communicate like, hey, this is why I said these things, because maybe the other person was thinking that your tone meant something completely different. That's what we have found in our marriage. We have to talk things through, and sometimes it is just excruciating, but it's the most helpful thing is you just need to be able to communicate.
I'd say lots and lots and lots of grace, and lots of forgiveness. That's how we get through all of our stuff.
I found that a lot of times what you're fighting about in the moment isn't what the real argument is. And so trying to figure out, okay, why are they upset? Because it's probably not, that they're upset. I didn't let them choose where to go for dinner. It's probably like they feel like you're not listening to them, or you always decide everything. So just trying to think about, okay, what's really the heart issue of the argument.
I think for me, when we fight, we've had some doozies. It's like World War III sometimes in our house. And so, especially for the first year, it was just constant. And I think it's going to happen, especially, when you first get married, you are taking two people who have lived separately and shoving them under one roof and just saying, hey, let's see what happens. But even when dating, I think the biggest thing is that it needs to be taken with perspective. The majority of the fights that we have, we might come to a compromise, we might not, but the perspective of I love her, I'm for her, is what gets me to realize this probably isn't worth dying on a hill for. So.
I would say one thing that we kind of did, and I think we try to actively do is we set kind of clear boundaries. Like there's like some jokes like I don't like breakup jokes or stuff like that. So we kind of set clear boundaries and stuff I just don't want to have you deal with. And I think also we're not afraid to be confrontational. I don't mean that in a negative sense, but like kind of like nipping things before they even get to a point where you, like Megan said, like where you're kind of fighting about something else. It's not about where you want to go for dinner. It's about not listening or something. And then I think the other thing too is just, it's not all going to be the other person's fault. It's not going to be 100% their fault. You might have some ownership, and just being able to be humble and saying, okay, I think this is where I probably messed up, where I wasn't listening, or I was just trying to insert my opinion. They were just willing to shoulder or just to hear them out, just to vent. So just recognizing that there's ownership, so it's not going to just be 100%, but you might have some sort of ownership on that as well.
Thanks for sharing. Does anybody want to ask a question before I ask a few others? Just want to give you space to ask. Okay, we get there. I actually think this is an awesome question, and all of you, I think, can probably speak into that, into this one. What if you ask somebody out in the church and it ends badly? So I guess maybe it could be another person, in this room, and then it ends badly. I guess whatever ends badly means, but and how do you make it not awkward?
So I can't say that it ended badly, but I would say that it can be awkward, and it's probably going to be awkward. Depends on how long you guys dated and how deep the relationship got, but I would say that still continue to be loving, and that's what we're called to do, and be like, you can do your part in being loving and being gracious, but it does take two people to not make it awkward, and if it is awkward, then just give it time. Sometimes it takes time for it to settle and be friends again, so that would be my advice.
Yeah, I would say it's like Rosie was saying, it's going to be awkward for a little bit. There's no way around it. You can't make it not be awkward because you had this relationship with someone and now that is gone, and you have to reestablish what your relationship is going to look like now. So it's just going to take time to figure out how you guys are going to be around each other.
I'll say I grew up in the church, so I dated within the church as a teenager. And definitely it's going to be awkward, but I think part of avoiding that and maybe getting past that is going to be choosing wisely who you are dating. You want to make sure it's someone that you can trust, that you can say that you want, if we break up, we can stand next to each other without wanting to, put an elbow in an eye. I think a lot of that's going to be learning who you can trust and learning that as children of God, we're all called to love each other. We don't necessarily have to like each other, but we do have to be pleasant to each other.
I would say too, I know asking the girls can be really nerve-wracking. And when I asked Megan out, we were making small talk, and she was talking, but my brain was just thinking just don't figure ask her out. But despite the nerves that you might feel when you're asking out someone, or if you're being asked out, I get those nerves there. But I guess just remember too, put it in perspective. You're asking just someone out to dinner, to coffee, whatever you might be doing. You're not asking them to marry you. So I also just put it in perspective, in terms of not making it awkward. It's just both parties recognize they're not asking to marry you. They're just asking for a couple hours to hang out, to get to know you more. And if it's not where you want to be, that's fine. And it's okay to explain that. And everyone said be loving about it too. And I think too, really just having that focus on God. I think that's one thing that really helped me out in my walk, was trusting that I had enough in God. And again, I know that's easy to say from this perspective, but at the same time, it can be that simple. It doesn't have to be a really biblical answer. It's just I trusted God for He's gonna take care of my life. It's gonna be my whole life. That includes finances, my career, but also includes my relationship life as far as marriage is concerned. And I think that kind of has definitely rewarded. I've seen that rewarded. So.
All right, student texted in. How do you know when it's time to end a relationship? So how do you know when it's it's time to end a relationship? This one of you at this point, probably over. I don't know if you want to follow up.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is, well, if it's steering you away from the Lord and it's toxic or it's not helping you grow in some way, or they're not helping you focus on Jesus, I think that would be definitely a red flag for me. I think of the other things.
I would say also listen to your peers, the people that love you, because a lot of times, and I'll speak more for the guys, most guys are goal-oriented, and so you get going head first into something, get really excited, and that's all you can think of. In doing that, you can make that an idol, and that's something to be very careful of, because you feel like you're doing what God would say, you're pursuing somebody. But I think it's important to listen to that outside wisdom as well. You know, if it's a friend that comes by, or again, a pastor or a youth leader, and says, maybe you should pump the brakes a little bit. If you're being transparent about your relationship to the people that love you and love on you, you'll get great guidance. You'll be able to control that and understand when maybe you should end in a relationship or slow it down and learn how to navigate it.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, but it is really helpful to listen to the people around you. And sometimes that's like, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Some people might just not like the person, but if overall all of your friends are saying, hey, this is not healthy, or like, hey, I don't think this guy or this girl is steering you towards God or making you a better person, then I don't know, maybe they have something to that. I've seen that happen in a lot of friends' relationships where everyone was telling them, hey, this doesn't seem like a healthy relationship. And then eventually when they do break up and they look back and they're like, oh, you guys were right. So just listen to that. Also, just take inventory of yourself. Like, are you focusing on God? Are you prioritizing things right? And also, is this person making you a better person? Or are you guys just stagnant? Are you actually making each other worse by being around each other? Just kind of take inventory of like how that's affecting you. And if it's all negative things, then, probably maybe that's the end of that relationship.
Student asks, what is a biblical and God-honoring way to date? What is a biblical and God-honoring way to date?
So one thing I did, I really just started to dive into the word to understand, because as Lucas said, there's nothing about like dating in the Bible really. And so a couple of things that I did was, I started to surround myself with a small group of like guys I just consider brothers now. A lot of them came from my small groups. And so, I talked to them a lot about it. And one of the things I kind of realized was I needed to have them in my life first before I could have like a girlfriend or even really go down that path, because kind of, as Matt said earlier, being oriented, you kind of can make that an idol. So when I had those guys and those friends around me to have those questions answered, that really helped out. And then, like I said, diving into the Word, and then just being really, really prayerful about it as I'm talking to, as I was talking to people, praying like, God, is this someone I should be pursuing? And it really felt like a day or two later, I would get an answer where the person would be like, oh, I think we're just like friends. It's like, oh, I guess that's answered. So, and then, as Lucas said from the very beginning, I think of this whole like series is like go into it understanding that you want to date for marriage. And I think after our first date, we had what we call like the talks on the rocks. We took primers, Mike, and silence and rocks and talk. And that was like one thing he said, like, yeah, I really want to date for marriage, and she agreed. And so we were both on the same page with that from the very beginning. It wasn't just like, I just kind of want to see if you're cool or not. Let's see how this goes. It was like, no, here's kind of like what I'm aiming for. She had the same goal, and it was like, okay, can we get to that goal together, or should we get to that goal together? So.
I think too, making sure that you're keeping yourself right, keeping your own walk
really important, because if you aren't right with God, you're not going to be right in any of your relationships, but especially your dating relationships. So, you know, making sure that you're continuing with your quiet time, that you're keeping up with, you know, your own ministry goals, your own personal goals. And then I think also having an older man or woman who can be sort of an accountability person is really, really valuable. You know, maybe it's your small group leader, maybe it's your mom, maybe it's your dad, whatever. But I think just having someone that you can talk to honestly, and that you trust to call you out on your crap is really, really, really valuable for any stage of dating, any stage of marriage. I think, you know, even as, you know, we've been married nearly 5 years and still having people who will call us out when we're being boneheads is great.
Yeah, personally, I just waited to date until I felt like I was closer to being ready for marriage. And I just found that to be really helpful in protecting your heart. And I really glad that I waited until I felt like I was ready to get married.
I think it's interesting, all these answers have been really philosophical, and I think great. When I heard the question, I thought, well, we'll play video games, go for a hike, go for coffee, you know. So I'm not sure the intent of the question, but another perspective is, dating can be beautiful and magical and all that, but then also I feel like, you know, it's not what the movies and TV shows portray. Make it fun, you know, make it something that you're looking to enjoy, activities, your faith, that you would with a friend, right? If you would go with another girlfriend to go hiking and enjoy that time, why not find somebody that you want to date that does the same thing, right? And I think that's part of it too, is I don't know, it's hard, it's easy for me to say because I'm married, but for you, if you're just starting to get into dating, it's going to be real exciting. You're going to have, you know, nerves and sweaty armpits, and, you know, you're going to fall all over yourself and spill coffee or soda, you know, I've done all those things. But you know, when it's appropriate, just try to relax, have fun, you know, pretend like you're with somebody else. And I think you'll find both of you as you're dating, the more relaxed you are and you're in natural environments that you've prayed over, prayed about this opportunity, you'll find whether you naturally or God is ordaining you to continue to take those steps. Versus maybe, no, this person is a super nerd, he loves video games, spends 8 hours, and I like to be outside 8 hours, right? You'll start to see some of that. And I'd also, on that note, encourage you to follow what God has put in your heart. Don't bend your heart or change what you feel God has made you to be because you think this person's really pretty or cute or strong or rich or famous or whatever. Because that's also a temptation, right? Well, I can play video games, and then, you know, 6 months, a year down in a relationship, you're tired of video games.
I would also just say, be thinking of the reason of why you want to date. I know for me, when I was in high school, I wasn't allowed to date until I was 15. And then once I was 15, I was like, I want a boyfriend. So I dated a lot of guys purely out of the fact of I just wanted a boyfriend and I wanted to feel special and I wanted someone to love me and to care for me. And that made for really silly relationships. A lot of them didn't last very long, and even the longest one before I dated Brandon was purely, I think, if I look back on it, I really wanted a prom date, and I just kind of went from there. So, like, I mean, and it's so easy to fool yourself into thinking that, yeah, like, this is fine, but just be thinking about your intentions and why you even want to date someone, because that's an easy trap, especially, I think, for women, for us to fall into, of just we want to feel loved, we want to feel needed, and yeah, so just be careful about that.
All right, another question, and this is for those who are single. Would you say you're content to be single, or do you have a desire to be married? So content to be single or desire to be married. And would you say it's easier or difficult to be single right now?
Well, I am now in a place where I'm content to be single. I really like being single. my life is up to me, and I can make these decisions based on what I am experiencing with God and not have to run them by another person, and I really like that. I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Yeah, are you content to be single? The next one was, would you say it's easier or more difficult to be single right now?
I would say it's probably a little bit more difficult to be single in the world that we know today, just because there are so many sexual things out there. It's all over the place. You know, anything that you're watching, anything you're listening to, it's there. And part of being single is not participating in that kind of stuff, which is hard. But it is. I just wanted to say that it is absolutely biblical to be single. There is nothing wrong with being single. And I'm 27, I have dated 3 people in my life. Just putting that out there. It's okay to not want to be in a relationship.
I would say that I am now content to be single, but I also do have the desire to be married. I'm both. And I think the reason why I found it difficult before to be single is because most of my friends in college got married like right out of college, and so for me it was just my surroundings, like everyone was getting married, and it just felt like, oh, it's me. So I think our culture also, that has a lot to do with how we feel. Is like our culture glorifies relationships and it glorifies marriage, and it makes it seem like it's the end all be all. And it can be easy to get trapped in that mentality. But I've realized lately that my singleness is just as important as when we're married, and I'm going to be using this time to live abundantly and glorify the Lord as much as I can in this season of life. And I'm not saying it's always easy, but I think just being surrounded by people who are already in a different stage in life can make it difficult.
Question that Super texted in was, how did you know that was the person you were supposed to marry? My assumption is they didn't just show up with the signs that I'm the one. Maybe it could have, I guess, if that's part of your story. But how did you know that, the one that you're engaged to or the one that you're married, that was the one? Out of all the fish in the sea, this is the one.
Well, my story is probably a little bit more dramatic than I hope any of y'all will ever be. But I straight up got the voice of God that told me that David was the man I was supposed to marry. I also said no. So yeah, I mean, it was very clear to me that that God wanted me to marry David. And it was kind of a weird time because David was not yet a Christian when I was informed that by the Lord. And so I was kind of like, well, that's going to be a pass on my end. So we're just going to see what happens. And then, we were friends and we came to know the Lord and we got married.
So I did not grow up in the church, so I was not always a Christian. I was saved when I was about 18, and then I walked away from the Lord at that point because I didn't really know what it meant to grow in the Lord and what that looked like. I was going off to college, and I kind of prayed, what college am I supposed to go to, this one or that one? And I didn't have an answer, and so I was like, well, there must not be God. God doesn't care about this part of my life. So anyways, so after I walked away and in college and after college, I dated several people, always with the intention, I always wanted to get married. It was something that, not a goal, but I was excited for. And the reason I knew it was different, because after I had dated like out in the world, like if there's any kind of like consternation or like voice in your head like is saying like this isn't right, then it probably isn't. Like don't try to ignore that in the back of your head, because there's several times that I could have gotten married out in the world, but I listened to that voice and was like, there's something not right. And then so when I met Matt, like I had such peace and such just peace with it, like meeting him and dating him and talking about our relationship. So
I think for me, it was tricky. Like I said at the beginning, I was married before, went through a divorce, and then went out to the dating world. And actually, I was on Match, right? So online, trying to be all hip and cool. Turns out that's not how that works when you're my age. But anyway, did that and went through dating, and it was kind of frustrating. And actually, I was like, okay, I was talking to my dad and a good friend of mine, and said, hey, this is really kind of stupid. I'm done, and I'm gonna take 6-8 months off. I'm not gonna get off of this online thing. And I had 2 dates left. One of them, I never heard from her, didn't work out. And then Victoria. And it was funny because I was just like, well, we decided to go be respectful and honor our commitment to meet for dinner. And it was funny because I remember kind of off the side when I was excited about dating and being married again, I gave God my list, right? You know, if you ever done that, it works out well. This is what I want, God, right? Make sure all these boxes are checked. And by the way, you know, I got something to do at 5, so if she can show up here ready to go, that'd be really nice of you. So, funny thing is, God has a sense of humor. And he said, oh, okay, well, here's your checklist plus. And when I met Victoria, I was truly blown away. You know, when I finally decided to commit to God, the activity of dating, the idea of being in a relationship, I won't say it was, I didn't, you know, unfortunately, I didn't hear a voice, but it was also so powerful, there was really no question. It was kind of like, well, that's the only door that you can walk through, because all the other ones don't even exist. And so God really gave me, again, kind of that list, but everything, so much more in Victoria. And we've had such a blessed and amazing relationship. And then again, too, it's not for me at least, it doesn't feel like a decision or an aha. It's as though we're both, every minute, every day, as you're both walking towards, hopefully, God, it makes it much more like, oh yeah, this is awesome. This is somebody that I can walk with, someone I can talk to, and I don't know, it's like a dance. You know, do you like to dance or like to watch dances? 2 beautiful dancers, and they seem to move as one, right? And that's for me how I felt. I guess I figured out that she was the one. No step on toes.
For me, Brandon and I knew each other in middle school and high school. We were friends, and there was a lot of me liking him and he not liking me back and all of that. But we started dating a week into college, going to separate colleges, 3 hours apart, and we had realized that we liked each other, and we were like, that would be stupid to start dating when, you know, we're 3 hours apart, and we're entering college, and we're going to become totally different people. But a week into college, he came back to Austin, we went on a date, and we were like, yeah, let's do this. And for me, it was very clear within the first month of us dating that he was different than any of the other guys that I had dated, and it was very much that sense of peace and just like knowing like, yeah, this is it for me. This is who I'm gonna be with, and I felt I just felt very sure of that, and I knew how crazy that felt. So I didn't tell a lot of people that because I was like, I'm gonna look crazy if I'm like, this is the guy I'm gonna marry. And for Brandon, I hope he doesn't mind. I'm gonna speak for him. But